Welcome to Top Spot 40 Music Docuseries, where we bring the stories behind the music to life.
Roberto Carlos carries his story in his voice, that warm, velvety tone that feels like a late-night conversation with an old friend who truly understands you. From the very beginning, life asked hard questions of him, and music became the way he answered. When he was just 6 years old in the quiet town of Cachoeiro de Itapemirim, he and his little brother were playing near the railroad tracks. His foot slipped and caught between the rails. The train couldn't stop. The accident took his right leg below the knee, but it gave him something else in return, an unshakable sense of what really matters. While he recovered in the hospital, the radio became his constant companion. He listened to voices from far away and made himself a quiet promise that one day he would be the one singing into someone else's lonely room. His mother, Laura, sat beside his bed and told him he was going to be special. That belief, offered at the lowest moment of his young life, stayed with him forever. Years later, that boy with the prosthetic leg taught himself guitar. He figured out how to stand on stage so the limp was barely noticeable. Not because he was ashamed, but because he wanted people to hear the song, not the struggle. In Rio, he met another dreamer named Roberto Carlos. The two young men bonded instantly over smuggled Elvis and Beatles records. They would sit for hours translating those sounds into Portuguese, laughing when the words didn't fit, arguing over a chord change until sunrise. Their friendship became one of the great creative partnerships in Brazilian music. Two regular guys from modest backgrounds who accidentally started a revolution. That revolution was called Jovem Guarda. Suddenly, Brazilian teenagers had their own idols singing about their own lives in their own language. Roberto found himself at the center of a cultural earthquake. The TV show they hosted was pure pandemonium, kids screaming, dancing in the aisles, fainting when he walked on stage. There's a wonderful story from those early days about a power failure during an outdoor concert. The amplifiers went dead, the lights vanished, and 15,000 people fell into sudden silence. Instead of canceling, Roberto asked for an acoustic guitar, sat on the edge of the stage in the dark, and sang by the light of hundreds of matches struck by the audience. That night taught him something he never forgot. The real connection happens when the machinery stops and only the voice and the heart remain. As the 60s gave way to the 70s, he felt a deep pull to change direction. The frantic energy of rock and roll had been thrilling, but his soul wanted to talk about quieter things, the way a woman looks when she's thinking about you, the small details that make love last, the ache when someone leaves. Many people in the business told him he was making a mistake, that his young fans would never follow him into ballads. He followed his heart anyway. The gamble became one of the most successful artistic transformations in Latin music history. His voice, always expressive, now carried a new maturity. People across Brazil, then across every Spanish-speaking country, recognized their own lives in his songs. He learned Spanish so well that many listeners in Mexico and Argentina still believe he was born in Latin America. One of the most touching moments in his long career came when he finally wrote the song he had been carrying in his chest since childhood. Lady Laura was his love letter to the mother who had dried his tears after the accident, who had sewn his first stage clothes, who had never stopped believing. When she first heard the finished recording, she couldn't speak. She simply held her son and cried. Every time he performed it afterward, you could see him glance upward for a moment, checking to see if she was listening from wherever she had gone. There's another story that reveals the kind of man he is. During a tour in the 90s, he learned that a young fan with a similar disability would be in the audience. Instead of a quick meet and greet, Roberto sat with the boy for nearly an hour after the show, sharing the practical tricks he had learned about living with a prosthetic, talking about confidence, about standing tall even when the world sometimes stares. That conversation meant more to that young man than any autograph ever could. Through every decade, he has kept one quality that feels increasingly rare: sincerity. When he sings about love, you believe him because he has lived its full spectrum: the early passion, the marriages, the heartbreaks, the long, peaceful stretches, the loneliness that sometimes visits even the luckiest among us. His annual television specials became something like a national hearth in Brazil, families gathering each year to hear him sing old favorites and new songs, knowing he would never phone it in, never give them anything less than his complete emotional presence. Listen to him today and you still hear that hospital boy who found comfort in a radio. You hear the young revolutionary who changed Brazilian music with his best friend. You hear the grateful son who turned his mother's love into melody. And you hear a man who understands that music's highest purpose is to make people feel less alone. That's why Roberto Carlos still matters, long after most of his contemporaries have faded. In a world that grows louder and colder by the day, his voice remains an invitation to feel deeply, to remember the details that make a life worth living, to believe that tenderness is still revolutionary. Put on one of his records, and within the first few bars you'll understand. Some artists sing to an audience. Roberto Carlos has always sung to you. And somehow, even after all these years, it still feels like he's singing to you right now.
Thank you for joining us for Top Spot 40 Music Docuseries. Discover all the stories behind the music at topspot40.com. Until next time, keep the music playing.